YouTube. My name is Will Chandler, coming back again to make another video. I've done some brief overviews of growing up as a Jehovah's Witness in the cult, and I kind of have an outline by age of some of the other stuff. I want to put my voice out there, put my experience out there, my life, just to help. If there's anyone out there that might have a hard time understanding if they were the only one, or just any way it might help, and to help also. There's nothing new under the sun, right? But oftentimes in the human experience, we tend to think that we are the only ones, and so I just want to lend my voice to making sure that people realize that this is an actual problem within the Jehovah's Witnesses, top down, and that needs to be dealt with, needs to be changed. The two-witness rule needs to be changed. The way they deal with families needs to be changed. What they do, everything about it. Of course, if we got what we wanted there, then it wouldn't be recognizable. It wouldn't be what it is, and that's the ultimate goal anyway, right? To get rid of the evil that is perpetrated on us. So as I mentioned before, at the age of 2, my mother leaves my father for the Jehovah's Witness religion. When I was 3, now I'll back up for a second. My mother was the first one in our family to become a Jehovah's Witness, and she eventually converted her sister, my aunt, and then my maternal grandparents, they wanted nothing to do with it. So it was just my mother and then my aunt in our family. And so anyway, at the age of 3, I ended up in the hospital needing a surgery, and of course my mother wouldn't sign the consent for a blood transfusion, and so here I am needing surgery, and of course my mother's willing to let me die. Never mind the fact that if you have a real Bible in the red words, Jesus himself says, do you not know that I want mercy and not a sacrifice? But those types of words fall on deaf ears when it comes to Jehovah's Witnesses. So she's willing to sacrifice me for this. So my grandmother, her mother, secretly calls my father and tells him what's going on. So 12 hours later, he's up in Maine and has signed the consent form, and I have the surgery, and I'm here today. And thank you, Dad. So from the age of 3, there was a real chance that I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now if it hadn't been for my grandmother reaching out to defy the blood sacrifice of the Jehovah's Witnesses, and the fact that my mother was willing to. Mind-boggling. I don't understand. I have kids. My wife and I have beautiful children. We might mess everything else up, but we make good-looking and good kids. For the life of me, I can't understand sacrificing children for dogma. I don't understand. So anyway, there I was, got recovered, and my grandmother saved my life. So from the ages of 2 to 16, this is important to note that my mother tells me that my father is the devil incarnate. It's an evil man, that he wanted to kill us, that he was going to die at Armageddon. And he told me that my dad is a terrible liar, and not to believe anything he says. Of course, all of that, I realized all those lies were actually her. It's unfortunate. Then I mentioned before, again, at 5 years old, she married a Jehovah's Witness ministerial servant. From the ages of 5 to 15, I was sexually, physically, mentally, emotionally abused by my Jehovah's Witness stepfather. From the ages of 2 to 15, my mother, my stepfather, and the local Jehovah's Witness elders, and she also had a child custody packet, actively thwart visitation by my father. There were times growing up that he would show up for a visitation and we would be nowhere to be found. I remember growing up, would take these quick, all of a sudden, this great idea, we're going to go on a trip. And well, come to find out years later, the reason is that my father would call up and say, hey, I'm coming for visitation. And he would drive from Virginia to Maine, get there, and we would be in the wind. Let's see. Now, in that time, from the ages of 2 to 15, my father does occasionally manage to see my sister and myself. And, of course, that was also in large part to him being law enforcement. He was able to kind of put the hammer down, literally by the help of some judges, and I was able to see him a few times in the course of growing up. And of course, every time before the visit, for days before, it was a constant pounding into my head by my mother and my stepfather that this man was evil, that his wife was evil, that they were going to die at Armageddon. They can't believe anything they say. They don't love me, no matter what he says. They don't really love me. And this is what I was told this for days and days and days. And then comes the day that we have to go with him for a week or two, and I'm thinking they're sending me off with the devil when I was younger, right? I didn't know any better. And of course, we had to talk to my mother and stepfather on the phone every day that we were with him. And there was one time in particular that they were trying to tell me how horrible he is. And I must have been 7 or 8, maybe at most. And I was crying on the phone saying, but he's not like that. He's really not like that. And, they're just telling me over and over again I'm wrong, and that my father and my stepmother are horrible people. And here I am crying on the phone as a kid, understanding that this cognitive dissonance that I was having at that age, that the man I see before me, that is my father, is an amazing person. And here I'm being told by the Jehovah's Witness side of things that he's evil and going to die at Armageddon. And it was obvious at a young age who was being untruthful, but thanks to cult programming, it was hard to see for quite a while. Anyway, so that I mentioned at the age of 12, the Jehovah's Witness ministerial servant friend of my stepfather dislocated my shoulder, tore some ligaments, tendons, and a fit of rage that he had after he initiated roughhousing. Let's see, and then at the age of 12, we moved from Maine to where the need was great, down in Vernon, Texas. It's about 3 hours northwest of Dallas-Fort Worth area. Also at the age of 12, the true reason that we moved, which was my stepfather admitted to this, was so that his friends and family would not find out he was a pedophile if I ever outed him. He understood that any reason for reproof or disfellowshipping would be kept strictly confidential by the organization. He knew that no leadership, no friends, family would find out what he was if it came out down in Texas. So at the age of 13, I tell my mother and then the elders about the sexual abuse by my stepfather. And, of course, I still had to see my rapist at every meeting. 3 times a week, Sunday 10 to 12, Tuesday 7 to 8, Thursday 6 to 8. So it kind of still stuck quite a bit, huh? So then, of course, shortly after that, my stepfather is kicked out of the house and spends, at most, he was disfellowshipped 6 months. I don't think it was even that. I mean, it's got to be near record for how short amount of time this man was punished for raping me. Of course, we had moved to where the need was great to help out, right? So why keep the child rapist in bad standing? Let's have him help out. And every meeting that he was at, he sat in the back when he was disfellowshipped for the few months. Sat in back with crocodile tears in his eyes, acting all like, woe is me, and I'm so sorry. Of course, it was all shenanigans. Again, let's see, age of 13, I also finished 7th grade in public school, and then I began homeschooling. So I homeschooled myself for the rest. I started homeschooling myself for high school, and I started working full time in the family business. Imagine this: a cleaning business, carpet cleaning, and at the age of 14. This is, I don't know, like, again, maybe 6 months at most. I'm pretty sure it was less than that, but at most 6 months after all of the, my stepfather's outed as a pedophile, and she is ordered by the elders in the congregation, as per direction from headquarters. She is ordered to go back to him, to reconcile her marriage. It is God's will, she is told, that the marriage be reconciled. And so, that's what she does. So, after all this, I've said what happened, and, a few short months later, she's putting me back in the house with a man. I'm being told that it's God's will that this happen. And so as a young kid, at 14 years old, I didn't know any better. I just assumed that's the way it's supposed to be. And of course, abuse continues. Imagine that, right? Another big surprise. So, cognitive dissonance there for me, especially. Like, here I am thinking I did the right thing. And then a few months later, the Jehovah's Witness elders are making sure that this same thing is happening to me again. Let's see, of course, and also at the age of 14, I was baptized as a Jehovah's Witness because it was expected. It was nothing to do with what I actually believed. It was just a check-the-box activity. There was no come to Jesus moment. Well, I guess it would be come to Jehovah moment, right? There was no moment like that where, I made, the expression they use, I made the truth my own. Didn't happen. It was just something I was supposed to do. I've been raised from my first memories as one, and that's what I was supposed to do. So at 14, that's what I'm doing. Let's see. I kind of touched on this yesterday, too. So about the age of 14 or so, I came to realize that my stepfather desires me as he is supposed to desire his wife. I used this to get him to treat my mother better, be less abusive towards her and my sisters, and also a half-sister at this point. I used my body as a bargaining chip to get him to be less abusive. It was not until actually this year that my mother claims to have found out, although I'm 99% positive I told her many years ago. But it's not until this past year that my mother found out why it would sometimes go from bad in the family to all of a sudden overnight it would start getting much better, and Mark, my stepfather, would be so much nicer because I had bargained my body away to keep her and my sister safe. Yeah, so that was fun. Let's see. So again, at the age of 14, I was just touching this, that my mother takes my rapist stepfather back because the Jehovah's Witness leadership told her to. So shortly after that, they're back together, and my mother went with my older sister. My younger sister went to stay with some family out of state. My mother wanted to go to the International Convention in Russia because Russia had just lifted their ban, and that was in the early 90s. And so she wanted to go to this. It was one of the JW International Conventions there in Russia. And, okay, she goes back to the man that was raping me. All right. Let's think about this again. So, not that long ago, she was separated from that man because of this. And then she decides she wants to go on a trip to Russia for a Jehovah's Witness International Convention to celebrate the ban being lifted at that time. Thankfully, it's back in place. Left me alone with my rapist, who had been molesting me since the age of 5, and she leaves for 2 weeks and leaves me alone with this man. It shows the cult brainwashing, the cult mind control. God had told her that she needed to be back in the marriage with him, and so she just, all right, well, God said everything's fine, so who cares if my son's getting raped? Whatever, right? As a parent, it's unconscionable. It's crazy. Well, at the age of 14, I also started doing some bodybuilding. 14 years old, I was 195 pounds, so big kid already. And by 15, I had dropped down to 170, but I had pretty much no body fat at the time. I was squatting close to 500 and benching 350 at 15 years old. There was a Gold's Gym owner in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, that wanted to sponsor me for the National Bodybuilding Competition and National Bodybuilding Championship, sorry. And like I mentioned, we had this route that we did every month doing carpet cleaning for big name chain restaurants and hotels and that kind of stuff. And so we regularly begot these different gyms. And this one in Oklahoma City, the owner talked to me. He wanted to sponsor me, like I said, for the bodybuilding championship that year. Of course, I asked my mother about it, and my mother said no, because Jehovah's Witnesses are not supposed to participate in competitive sports. Well, I ended up seeing the kid that won it, and I had opportunity. I would have had hands down. All I would have had to do is show up and walk on stage. And I would have had a national bodybuilding championship at the age of 15. And of course, because I'm a Jehovah's Witness at the time, that wasn't allowed. Let's see. So again, at the age of 15, my mother tries to convince me to run away and even to go live with my birth father. Of course, this is after the Russia convention that she leaves me alone with my rapist for a couple weeks. She's starting to realize at this point, when she talks to me about this, she's starting to realize that it might not have been Jehovah that told her to go back to this child rapist and get in the marriage bed with him. I think she started to realize this. And of course, my mother doesn't really know me. Like I mentioned, it was more important for her to knock on doors than to pick me up from school, like I mentioned before. And so here she is trying to convince me. She actually tried to convince me to go move in with my real father, who I did eventually. The man that she had been telling me was a devil incarnate my whole life, and was a liar and a horrible person, and when we were kids wanted to kill us. This is what she told me from my earliest memories of her telling me about my father. And she's now telling me to move in with the man.